Hey guys, and welcome to the second part of how to paint Grimdark Flesh. In this video we're going to be taking a look more on how we can get more like a zombie slash really awful skin tone, which is going to really go into that Grimdark aesthetic. And obviously in this video we're going to be using a mix of, acrylics, enamels, and we might even use a little bit of oils a little bit later on. This is an Age of Sigmar model, which is a little bit different to what I usually paint on this channel. However, I love painting these up in the Grimdark style, especially this one. It's from the Cursed City box set. I have put a zenithal prime on this. It's not essential for this tutorial. I think it's just because when I stuck them together, I did like a batch undercoat and sprayed a zenithal on this. It can make it stand out a little bit better, but it's not essential. Now, the first colour that we're going to base coat this with, I'm going to be using an airbrush. It's not essential, which is Canadian Flesh Tone. This is going to be our base tone, and then we're going to work some stuff on top of that, and then take it from there. But again, you can do this by a brush, and when I had the second colour, which we'll come into a little bit later, obviously I'm going to be doing a sort of a zenithal top-down spray onto the flesh. If you go onto my first video, I use like a dry brushing technique. You can use that if you've not got an airbrush. But first of all, you just want to work your way around the mini and just get some of that Canadian flesh tone on there. I've thinned mine quite heavily because it's quite a thick paint and I didn't want it to block up my airbrush, so I might have to apply a couple of coats. Don't worry about any overspray at this stage, because we can go over and fix all that later. Which is when I'm spraying a mini, I tend to, it depends really, because the Space Marines are a little bit different, but when it's something like this, I tend to work from the outside in, inside out, should I say. Get your words right, knife. But yeah, it just makes things a little bit easier because this is our first tone. I can go over some other sprays a little bit later. But because this guy is like some sort of graveyard digger sort of thing, you can see here at the bottom he's pulling up a body. We are going to be making this look quite dirty and oily, but when you use a different mix of colours and ink washes once we've completed this first step. Now once you've done that, you should be looking something a little bit like this. I've sprayed the little dude who is grabbing or digging up from the grave. The reason for this is I'm going to show you how you can achieve a different tone by the different washes that we're going to come to a little bit later on. But next up, like I said, we're going to use a top-down zenithal to highlight some of the skin with Army Painter Air Zombie Flesh. This is a really nice colour for Grimdark Flesh. It's like a bleach tone with a slight green tint to it. But all we're going to do, I've thinned this not too heavily, but I've thinned it a little bit more than usual because I don't want to overpower it a little bit too much. Now I'm not going to get into ratios and stuff because again it comes down to the paint that you're using and with the airbrush and the needle size and everything like that. But yeah, if you ever want to know, mine's a 0.4 needle and nozzle with the Infinity airbrush. But again, we're just applying that from a top down, so as you can see it is leaving a little bit of skin in shadow, which is good, especially like under those arms and stuff is where I want to be. But I'm just working really delicately around that miniature and just building it up. But if you're not an airbrush guy, I know a lot of people on this channel have not really done or used an airbrush before. If it's a scary concept, I know they can be quite expensive and stuff. But I literally started with a cheap Amazon kit. It was like one of these where you didn't even need a compressor or anything. You just sort of come with this USB charging thing. I started off there, ran into a lot of blockages, but there's tons of tutorials out there on airbrushing and stuff. But it is just one tip is just thinning those paints and getting that correct consistency and getting it a good clean. Now once you've done that, you should have something that looks like this. And as you can tell, like here on the arms, it's still leaving a little bit of shadow, like under his tummy and stuff. But now he's got that really, that zombie flesh start of a tone. This is a great base coat that we can start to work from now using some washes, and then we're going to jump into an enamel a little bit later on. So we want, because this is like a zombie guy, we want to mix those flesh tones up a little bit. We want some different tones in there. So for the washers, we're going to use a mix of these. One which is Colia Green Shade. This one's really good for Grimdark Flesh, which is the new one, the Mortorian Grime. And then obviously for certain areas where it's like the skin's cut and stuff, where this zombie might have a little bit of blood running through it, Tiger Rag Shade. And then for some of the really bloody areas, we're going to use Berserker Blood Shade. So to start off with, because like I said, this one is my favourite, we're going to be using Mortorian Grime. Now I am going to be thinning these colours a little bit. You don't need to mix them with any sort of mediums or anything like that. If you get once you get used to this, I do recommend doing it on a palette. However, when you get used to, like pushing washes and stuff around, you can I can sort of dip my brush in water and know how much excess is on there to how much I want to thin it. So I sort of mix it on the miniature itself. But you can see just from that leg, you've now got that really, like, this is going to sound awful saying this, if you've ever watched films or like documentaries and stuff, and they actually show you dead flesh, if you've watched like horror films like The Last of Us and stuff, you'll see a lot of them have this like yellowy brown orange awful tinge to it. But I'm just going to apply this, not to the whole mini, like I said, we're building up different tones and stuff, but just areas that I think it'll look good. Like I said, we can build on top of these. It's not a problem. But like I said, I'm just patchworking it all over the miniature. You don't have to wait for these to dry either before you jump into one of your other colours. You can go straight into that if you want, because it'll help blend those two tones together. The Colia Green Shade, I'm not going to go too heavy with this because I don't really want it looking like, it's like the Hulk or something, because it is quite a strong tone this, so I'd recommend thinning this down a little bit on a palette. But I'm only going to put this in certain areas just to show that little bit more decay. We are going to be using an enamel that's got a bit of a green tinge to it a little bit later on, and that's really going to enhance that grimdark look. Purple's a good colour to add into like a dead flesh as well, but for this one I didn't really want to add too much of that like purple tones. For me, I like to use purple on like vampires or your more like pale skin tones. Again, don't go too mad with this colour, because if you start adding like this Tiger Rag shade, you're going to lose that like dead corpse look, although it can enhance certain areas where there might be, like here on his back, he's got a little like cuts and bruises under the skin. I'm going to add little bits around there just to, as though like the skin's been bruised a little bit more, and down here where his spine's like practically exposed, I'm going to add some little bits to that. But it can also, Tiger Rag Shade can help areas like there under his arm add a little bit of shadow. Now the Berserker Blood Shade, we're going to add this after our next stage, and that'll become apparent in just a little bit. Now just to show you, about how heavy and the look you can get from different shades, we're going to apply the Mortorian Grime on this guy at the bottom, and also add a little bit of Poxwalker in there as well, which is a different sort of a green, just to show you the sort of looks that you can get, depending on how heavy you apply it and how much green you put in certain areas and stuff like that. But what's nice about these, it's almost like a wet blending technique, so I'm actually mixing these two shades together now onto the miniature, but we're just applying that a little bit heavier than what we have done on the skin above. And another really good tip I can share with you, if you're painting like dead flesh, obviously the guy at the bottom's been in the ground for quite some time. I'm going to get a yellow shade, which is Cassandra yellow. The yellow is quite vibrant, but you'll see when we come to the next stage how we can dull that down and just give it a little bit of a different look. Once that's all dried, now we can get into the fun bit. Again, we are going to be using an enamel for this. If you've never used them, I highly recommend going out and grabbing some with some mineral spirits, because they can really elevate that grimdark look. It gives it like this chalky, dusty look, what just, to me, it's just a completely different look to acrylics. For this, I am going to be using Streak and Grime. I would recommend using the normal Streak and Grime, but because I've run out, I'm having to use the winter Streak and Grime. It's basically the same colour. This has just got a slightly, little bit more of a green tinge to it, which, you know, is going to help with this dead flesh. But you don't necessarily need this one. It's just because I've run out. I would normally use Streak and Grime, but because I've run out, I've ended up having to use the winter Streak and Grime. But there ain't a huge difference. But we're literally just going to smother that all over the skin. Can thin it down a little bit, and like I said in my previous video, with skin tones it is all about experimenting with these, you know, these different colours and shades and stuff, and you can grab some oils and do it with oils. You'll get the same look, and all that experimenting is going to do is give you a different look on your miniature, and you'll be surprised that just by changing one tone how much of an impact that can have overall on like the different skin tone. So sometimes I might have used like a brown enamel. For this I've used rust on flesh before, because it's got that like orangey red tone to it. It works really well on grimdark flesh as well. But we're literally just going to go around and apply that to all the areas of the skin. You see he's looking, you might be looking at this if you've never seen out like this and thinking, why has he just ruined that with all the green? Don't worry, the beauty of enamels is we can take that off. Again, when I'm applying this to my miniatures, I don't always go in there. You can apply a base coat, but once you get a little bit more efficient at doing the reductive technique to take the streak and grime back off, it'll you'll see that you don't really need to varnish it if you're a bit more careful. Now we've let that mostly dry, this is where we can start to gently take off some of that streak and grime and leave some into some of the areas that we want it to be in there. And when it overall dries, once you've took all this off, you'll see it leaves like a nice chalky effect. One little tip like this, because there's so many little crevices and stuff like that on the miniature, what I like to do is reactivate it and get my brush, because it's a little bit softer, work that mineral spirit into the miniature, and as you can see it's starting to remove a little bit more on that chest, and then I can go back to my cotton dabber and start to soak all that up. But you just want to work your way around the whole mini and start working that back off. Now when you've done that and it's all dry, you'll have something that looks a little bit like this. And you can still see some of those original tones that we applied first of all around the miniature. Now I'm going to do one more thing to the skin with this before we add a couple more inks and add some details and stuff. Because this has got a lot of detail and ridge work, you can paint these pretty quick, and all I'm going to do is get a little bit of Rakarth flesh. Like I say, this is a different tone, but that's what we're aiming for with the skin tone, is all these different tones. It's all going to add up and add a lot more visual interest to that miniature. We're just going to grab a dry brush and just very lightly, because this is how you do the zenithal, like we did earlier, the areas that are going to be catching the light, just because we want to pick out some more of that ridge detail, on the Mini. We're just going to work his way around and add a little bit of the Rakarth flesh. You could use, you know, that original zombie colour if you want to use that, which I'll probably do just to show you. But we're just going to highlight just to make those areas stand out a little bit more, where like its muscle tone and the skin and bones that are showing through. Just want to make those pop just a little bit more. You can see I'm missing out all those shadow areas, and I'm just applying it to areas where I think the light would hit. And we'll just grab a little bit more of that original zombie flesh. And what we're going to be doing after this is just adding a little bit more tonage with that Berserker Bloodshade, just to areas that, you know, like round here has got a bit of detail which I want to add to it, and we'll take it from there. In another video I will be going into how to paint all these like leather and stuff like that in a Grimdark style, because I like to think of this as like a really heavy leather fabric that's, you know, it's been dragged along mucky floors and muddy floors in rain and stuff like that, and I'll show you how we can achieve different effects with it. I do have a really cool technique where you can make skin look a little bit more wet, and it's not using gloss varnish. I can't remember, it's not using gloss varnish, but there is a technique that I use to make certain areas look a little bit more wetter than what they are, especially if you're doing like a creature that's got like saliva and stuff coming from its mouth. All I've got now is the Berserker Bloodshade, and areas like these little, like where their skin split and stuff, I'm just going to add a tiny little bit into there. We've got a bit of pooling there. And don't be scared to tint the skin just around it, because that adds to that soreness, if it is that even a word? Soreness. And any areas where, you know, like it might have been impaled and stuff, I'm going to add that into it. If you really want it to get funky, you could get some blood and trickle that down his shoulders and stuff, showing that there might be like a bit of dry blood. And that is pretty much it for this colour recipe. Now I just want to say this does conclude the Grimdark skin tones. I could literally make 20 videos, which I'm sure would get pretty boring with a load of different colour recipes, but ultimately the principles are all the same. It's the techniques I want to teach you, and, you know, the little hints and tips on adding different variations of colour and tone. But what I want to go over in these, you know, these skin tutorials is just by adding little different things, the different, you know, like different colours and stuff, the different like tones and stuff you can get from it, and that's really the key, is just experimenting with stuff. Like I've used the exact same principle on this guy, obviously just using different colours. You can, I don't know if you can really see that on here, but he has got some of the wet effects that I was talking about on some of my previous videos, and it's not gloss. I'll teach that secret another time, so make sure you subscribe. And what we're talking about with the blood, like something like this guy, where it's literally the demon is ripping through his skin. You can see the tone from like normal skin tone, and then just by adding these little glossy effects, which is not gloss, like I keep saying, and adding like blood effects and stuff like that around it, can just completely transform the way, you know, your miniature looks on your shelf or the battle table. I did say, obviously, at the beginning of this video, I have painted this miniature before, and just to show you the difference in skin tones that you can get. Obviously, this is a little bit lighter, and this one's a little bit more heavier, because I really wanted, like I said, to make him look like he's been through the mud and the grime and the wars. But I will get into another video how to paint the fabric and the leather and stuff on this. Obviously the reason I'm painting it again is this is a Friends from a box set, and he asked me to paint up some of the heroes in that, so I thought excellent time to show you guys a tutorial. But yeah, that's basically it for the skin. I will obviously in future videos be showing some more different colour recipes and be going over some more tones and stuff like that. But one thing I'd like to ask, I'm just experimenting at the moment. I just want to know what you guys and stuff want to see. I have been thinking about setting up because I'm monetized now like a members only for the people that really want to do it, and it'll be like 2 videos a month where I go into some more secret techniques on how I achieve stuff, and a bit more in-depth tutorials for, you know, people that want to support this channel and me as a creator. But it's just a question, if you don't want that, then it's entirely up to you. Obviously there's always going to be content and stuff, but it's basically going to be 2 extra videos a month for a small fee, and I'll be going over that, like some of the wet techniques and stuff that I might be teaching in some of those videos. But I just want to know, yes or no. Let me know in the comments section below if you want to see that. One that has been popping up massively on this channel, which I'm going to do a tutorial on soon because you all keep pestering me for it. I released a short a while ago, and I just did this one afternoon where I didn't want to paint any specific chapter colour or anything like that, and I put this short online, and every time I click on YouTube, everyone's like, oh, what's the recipe for that? So yeah, I think this guy's going to be next and showing you how I did this one. But again, guys, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who subscribed and comments and stuff like that already. It really helped me out. If you could hit that like button, share it with your friends, stuff like that. I've got some really big stuff planned for the future of this channel. Competitions, winning free stuff, painting up armies and giving them away. So yeah, if you don't want to miss out on that, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, and please just share these videos with your friends and stuff. It would really help me out to keep growing with the channel. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in my next one.